We've spent the last few years watching Max Verstappen disappear into the distance, a lonely orange dot on a horizon of pure domination. The story was the car, the advantage, the inevitable victory lap. But then 2025 happened, and everything we thought we knew about power structures in Formula One got flipped on its head. The most fascinating thing wasn't just that someone finally beat Max Verstappen, it was how he was beaten, and by whom. Because Lando Norris didn't just win the 2025 championship as a lone wolf. He did it while fending off a historically brilliant drive from Verstappen-Gand, managing an intense season-long duel with his own teammate Oscar Piastri. This created a three-way dynamic so complex, so layered with cooperation and conflict, that it has completely rewritten the rulebook on how to challenge a titan. You don't need a secret alliance in a back room. Sometimes, the very chaos of competition creates a force more powerful than any single driver. Let's start with the obvious question: how did Max Verstappen, in what he and many experts consider the best season of his career, end up second? The answer is a tale of two halves, and it begins with a car that was, in Max's own words, hated at times. Red Bull's RB21 was a tricky beast, unpredictable, unstable, and a world away from the dominant rocket ship McLaren brought to the track. While Norris and Piastri were locking out front rows, Verstappen was in damage limitation mode from the very first race in Melbourne, where he chased down Norris but had to settle for second. His season was a masterclass in extracting the absolute maximum from a flawed package. His pole lap at Suzuka, snatching the track record from the McLarens, was a staggering moment of individual brilliance that announced he was still there, still fighting, even without the best car. He followed that with a stunning around the outside move on Piastri at Imola to win, a move so good it won the FIA Action of the Year award. But for 2/3 of the season, he was swimming against the tide. He was taken out in Austria on lap 1, made a costly and uncharacteristic error in Barcelona where he deliberately collided with George Russell, earning a penalty. He arrived at the Italian Grand Prix in Monza with a monstrous 104-point deficit to championship leader Oscar Piastri. At that point, even Verstappen thought his title chances were over. And then, everything changed. Red Bull, under new leadership after Christian Horner's exit, introduced crucial upgrades, most notably a new floor. The car that Verstappen had wrestled with suddenly became a weapon. For the final 9 rounds, he was the Verstappen of old relentless, flawless, and devastatingly fast. He won 5 of the last 8 Grands Prix, plus a sprint in Austin. He capitalized on every single McLaren mistake, from Piastri's nightmare in Baku to the team's strategy error in Qatar and their double disqualification in Las Vegas. By the time they reached the final race in Abu Dhabi, he had staged one of the great comebacks in F1 history, starting from pole with just a 12-point gap to Norris. He dominated that race, leading from start to finish, and it still wasn't enough. He finished the season with 421 points, a mere 2 points behind Norris, and with more wins, 8, than any other driver. That's the brutal, beautiful paradox of 2025. The driver widely regarded as the best on the grid, who performed at his absolute peak, was defeated by the math, the consistency, and the shared burden of 2 rivals in the same garage. Now, let's look inside that garage, because the McLaren story is where the real strategic intrigue lies. This wasn't a simple team orders narrative. This was a high-wire act of managing 2 fiercely competitive drivers who were both legitimate title contenders, all while an awakened Verstappen was hunting them down. The dynamic between Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri in 2025 was the most compelling teammate rivalry in years. Piastri, in only his 3rd F1 season, exploded into a genuine championship force. He led the standings for most of the campaign, winning 7 Grands Prix. After a disappointing home race in Melbourne where he spun to 9th, he fought back immediately, beating Norris in China and taking a series of wins that saw him seize the championship lead. For a long stretch, it was Piastri who looked like the more consistent threat. But here's where the power alliance concept gets interesting. It wasn't a formal pact, but their very existence as a duo created a strategic nightmare for Verstappen and a unique pressure cooker for themselves. They pushed each other to incredible height. Look at their qualifying battles. In the Netherlands, Piastri took pole by a razor-thin 0.012 seconds over Norris. This intense competition meant McLaren often had both cars on the front row, forcing Verstappen to fight 2 cars, not 1, for track position. In Austria, the team bravely let them race wheel-to-wheel for the lead, a decision that nearly backfired when Piastri had a massive lockup and narrowly avoided torpedoing Norris from behind. The team had to step in and tell Piastri that move was too marginal. This was the constant tension, incredible speed, fostered by their rivalry, but always tempered by the risk of mutual destruction, and that risk did materialize. In Canada, Norris, while trying to pass Piastri, clumsily drove into the back of his teammate's car, ending his own race. It was a moment that could have shattered team harmony, but Norris immediately took full, unequivocal blame, apologizing to the team and to Oscar, calling his move stupid. This act of responsibility was a turning point. It diffused toxicity and, according to reports, seemed to refocus Norris. It showed that despite the fierce rivalry, there was a foundational respect and a shared understanding of the bigger picture, beating Verstappen and winning for McLaren. The championship swung on moments where their dual threat directly hampered one another, to Verstappen's benefit. At the British Grand Prix, Piastri took a controversial penalty for erratic braking under a safety car, which handed the lead and the win to Norris. Piastri, seething, even asked the team over the radio if they'd give the position back, knowing full well what the answer would be. Later, at the Dutch GP, Norris suffered a heartbreaking mechanical failure from second place, while Piastri went on to win. These were massive, sometimes fortuitous, swings in points between them. While they were taking points off each other, Verstappen was steadily accumulating. The McLaren's greatest strength, having two championship-caliber drivers, was also their greatest vulnerability. They were, in effect, Verstappen's most powerful allies in his comeback, not through collaboration, but through the inevitable friction of competition. So, how did Lando Norris finally emerge from this three-way chaos as champion? It came down to resilience, clutch performance, and capitalizing on the closing stages of the season. After his engine failure in Zandvoort, something changed for Norris. Freed from the immediate pressure, he went on a searing run. He delivered commanding back-to-back wins in Mexico City and Sao Paulo. In Brazil, he took a perfect weekend, pole, sprint win, and Grand Prix victory for maximum points. This moved him back into the championship lead as Piastri, crucially, hit a late-season lull. When McLaren stumbled as a team with the Vegas disqualification and Qatar strategy error, it was Norris who managed the damage better, keeping his car on the island and scoring points. He entered Abu Dhabi with a 12-point lead over Verstappen and a 16-point lead over Piastri. All he needed was a podium. In the ultimate pressure cooker, with a lifetime's ambition on the line, he delivered exactly that. He qualified second, fell to third behind Piastri at the start, and then held that position with a calm, measured drive as Verstappen disappeared up the road to win. He did the job. He didn't need to be heroic, he needed to be precise. And in crossing the line in third place, Lando Norris became Formula One world champion, ending not only Verstappen's 4-year reign, but also McLaren's 17-year drought for a driver's title. The final standings tell the whole story of this triforce of chaos. Norris, 423 points. Verstappen, 421 points. Piastri, 410 points. The top three were separated by just 13 points. Verstappen had the most wins. Piastri led for most of the year, but Norris had the most points when it mattered most. So, who really beat Max Verstappen? You could say it was Lando Norris, the driver who held his nerve. You could say it was Oscar Piastri, whose relentless pace split the McLaren points and kept Verstappen in the hunt. You could even say it was the RB21, which left its driver with too much to do in the first half of the year. But the most accurate answer is that Max Verstappen was beaten by a system, the system of a two-pronged McLaren attack that, despite its internal friction, amassed an 833-point constructors title haul that Red Bull's 451 points couldn't touch. The secret power alliance wasn't a whispered agreement between drivers, it was the inherent structural advantage of having two elite cars and two elite drivers in the same team. They didn't need to conspire. Their simultaneous existence at the front created a vortex of competition that, in the end, even the greatest driver of his generation couldn't quite escape. This sets the stage for 2026 in a way we haven't seen in the modern era. Verstappen is hungrier than ever, driving at his absolute peak. Norris is a champion with the weight of expectation lifted. Piastri is a star who knows he let a title slip and will be desperate to make amends. The three best drivers of 2025 are all coming back, all in top teams, and all with a score to settle. This isn't a story that's over. It's a story that has just found its defining conflict. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the strategies and stories that shape F1, make sure to like and subscribe. The 2026 season is shaping up to be an epic battle from lights out, and we'll be here to break down every move in this new era of chaos at the front.